Kathy and Amy, and for every one of you for showing up today and bringing your special gift here today. The gift of generosity. Generosity is a gift that moves in both directions. As we give, notice what's happening with my hand. As I give, what does my hand do? It's open. It's also open now to receive. So when we give the gift of generosity, it's a flow. You're participating, we can call it, in the law of circulation. I don't know if that's a real law or not, but it's a spiritual law that we talk a lot about. But that life circulates. There's always a circulation of energy, of seasons, of tides, of cycles. There is a flow. And when the flow is slowed down or stagnated, you get a stinky pond. It isn't fresh, it isn't new, it isn't vital. So the whole idea of being generous is to move the flow. Now, Pablo Picasso is credited with saying, the meaning of life is to find your gift. And then he says, the purpose of life is to give that gift away. So, what is the gift that he is talking about? And the gift he's talking about is the gift of yourself, your vitality, your special essence. Amy has this gift of singing, but it's much more than that. There's a gift of heartfulness. There's a gift of participation. There's a gift of fearlessness, of jumping in. I could go on, and if I knew all of you better, I could point out the gifts. Oftentimes we don't recognize those gifts within us. Think of a glass of water. And for those that have a lot of money, that glass is full, and it's very important that we keep that glass from shaking because we could lose something. Because there tends to be an attachment to what's in the glass. But as we know, if we were to pass on some of this, what happens to the glass? The glass is now, let's say it's half empty. It's now available to receive something fresh, something new. And it seems like unless we give, how can we receive the abundance that is always here, always available, always in front of us? And I'm going to suggest that, all of the classes out there teaching abundance, and you want to be more abundant living, and you want to call money to you, and this and that, and that's great. And take the classes. But I'm going to say, you don't need to take the classes, you need to practice generosity. Because generosity precedes abundance. You can't be generous unless you recognize that you already are abundant. And that's the wake up. That's the joke. We already are and have that ability of being able to love wildly. Now, whether we practice or not, that's something else. We can talk about what holds us back. However, we have an abundance of time if we really were to look at it. And if I think of the most important times in my life, that have really molded me. Those were the times when someone was generous with their time. They mentored me, they questioned me, they held me. And that can be family members, teachers, mentors. But they brought something through me, or their generosity was given freely and it took. And when it takes, it shifts us to become more generous ourselves. And I had a great example of this years ago. I was driving across the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge. Toll takers, right? I drive up and, no, someone's paid for you. The guy in front of you just paid for your toll. I went, wow, that's pretty cool. I had no idea how much that affected me. That person's generosity, and the first thing I wanted to do was to drive up and to see who that was and to thank them, but I thought, no, that wasn't their thing. Their thing really was just to be generous, just to give to the world. As simple as that. And so I honored that by not going up and doing that, but I honored it by paying it forward. We have received so much in life through the generosity of others. Perhaps we could loosen up a little bit and to return the favor. And let's see. Muhammad Ali said, "Service to others is the rent we pay for your room and board here on earth." And I love that. It's like, okay, we've received so much. The fact that we're fed, clothed, healthy, we're here today. We have so much to be grateful for. Perhaps we can be the hands and pass this gratitude on to others. Kahil Gibran says, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." And that's where it becomes dangerous. Because when you truly give, you're giving with an open hand. You're giving with no defenses. You're giving your heartfulness, your love. And that's very, very tender and vulnerable. It takes somebody of courage to really give of oneself. And that's something we get to look at. We have opportunities all the time. I was on a trip to the Southwest and we're hitting a lot of motels. And one thing that I love to do is I love to hide dollar bills in the bed. And so when the housekeeping comes in, they, "Ooh, look at this. Ooh, look at this." And it is my joy. And I'll never know, but when you find something like that, it's just it just feels good. Another thing I do when I'm traveling in and around town also is if I'm in a restaurant or a Starbucks or something, and I know that the employees haven't had a chance to come in and clean the bathroom. Not that I'm going to clean the whole thing, but I mean, if there's papers all over the floor, how long does it take to go boom?
Yeah.
Or then wipe off the counter. And I leave it with a degree of satisfaction that I've created some kind of beauty and order for the next person. This is generosity.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard somebody say that, and it was Reverend Joan, this was 20 years ago, I picked up that practice. It was her generosity that sparked that idea, and I continued it forward. Another act of generosity is when we call friends, especially the friends that we haven't talked to recently, and we say, hey, you know, you came to mind and you're important to me. I want to reach out. And if you notice, when you finish that phone call, I know your friend feels better, but I know you also feel better. It's a flow that happens. And in this flow, we know that something happens within our neurosystem. Study after study has shown that being generous improves your mental health, improves your physical well-being. It just opens you up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most satisfied people I know are those that are the most generous. And it has nothing to do with what we call, physical abundance. I hang out at the taco truck a lot, so I get my lunch. I know the taco trucks all over Oakland and some in Alameda. So, I notice who tips and who doesn't tip. And you'd think that the people with the most money could be the most generous, and it's not. It's the absolute, it's the opposite of that.
Yep.
I noticed that some of the workers, coming in with sheetrock or paint all over them, or the mechanics that come in, and they're the tippers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, does it take money to be generous? No. It takes a full heart to be generous. It takes a heart that's overflowing. And when that heart is expressed, when it starts the flow, watch out. Because as we work to create light for another person, as we work to give of ourselves, of our love, of our wisdom, we can't give it unless we already possess it. And so the very act of giving rekindles that which we already had within us. The re-remembering of how fabulous and how important our existence is to the whole. I know it doesn't seem that way. In the Bhagavad Gita, Hanuman is talking to Ram. And Hanuman says, when I don't know who I am, I serve you. And when I do know who I am you. So if I were to think of one spiritual exercise or practice, it would be the practice of generosity. Mm-hmm. And let's go back and see what Hanuman was actually saying here. When I don't know who I am, when I don't know what my gifts are, I'm going to serve. I'm going to find out. I'm going to contribute. I'm going to be generous with my time. I'm going to shine that light. And the light that I shine actually starts to illuminate my way, my spiritual path. And when I discover through the light of my generosity, I come to see my interconnectedness with everything. And I realize that I'm really not giving to anybody other than myself. For I am a part of the whole, for I am the whole. Mm-hmm. I'm not just the wave on the ocean. When I look and see, I can see that that wave is connected to the whole ocean that is salty wherever you taste it. And so we serve, as so many here at the Home of Truth. We serve because it is our joy and that we know the feeling tone when we do. You know the feeling tone when you give a gift, how it feels in your body. And you know what it feels like when you receive a gift, genuinely receive a gift. And that again is a vulnerable experience. Because we're a bit afraid of this. Why are we afraid? It's too much. We could get emotional. It's mushy. It's too tender. I want to keep my identity. I want to hold on to my separateness. I don't want to really get how much I'm loved and how much love there is within me. This is some tough stuff. And so, yeah. So I invite us all to take a look in our lives. Is there room in your life to be just a little more generous? Is there room in your life to be just a little more generous? And what would that look like? How could you contribute your gift, your precious gift of your time, of who you are, your talent? How could you share that? With no string attached. Because it's not necessarily what you give, it's where you're giving from is where the healing, where the tenderness really hits. It's where you're coming from. And when you start to get where you're coming from, when you start to, and it's a practice, it's a muscle that we work on. But I guarantee you will see results. You can look in the mirror and you will see the results. So I think I've covered most of my points here. Yeah. So I just want to close with, forget about abundance. Be generous. And abundance definitely follows. Generosity and kindness and love, they all carpool in the same car. They ride to work together. And so with that, let's go into prayer as we take a breath together. And as we take a breath together, in simple recognition of all of the gifts that have been given by our ancestors, by the moon and the stars, the tides and the winds and the trees. All of this has been given freely. And we open our hearts to accept all of these gifts with gratitude. And in return, we vow to give from that place of unlimited love as we return the favor back to life. And we bask in the flow and the ebb of the tides of this giving and receiving, knowing that it is the initial initiation of the gift of generosity that continues the flow going. And so we are so grateful for this knowledge, and we vow to be even more generous than we are at this point. For this we give thanks. we let it go, knowing that we are abundant right now in so much. And so it is.
Mm-hmm.